provided for essential infrastructure such as water, power, railways and roads in Kopparthi node on the Visakhapatnam-Chennai industrial corridor and Varavakal node on the Hyderabad-Bangalore industrial corridor. An additional allocation will be provided this year towards capital investment for economic growth. Grants for backward regions of Rayalaseema, Prakasham, North Coastal Andhra, as stated in the Act, will be provided.
जिस बात की उम्मीद थी वो उम्मीद पूरी हुई?
उम्मीद पूरी हुई, पूरी तरह से संतुष्ट हैं। बहुत खुशी की बात है। केवल ये आप तेलुगु देशम की तरफ से मत देखिए, 5 करोड़ आंध्र प्रदेश के लोगों की तरफ से देखिए। जिस तरह से हमने चुनाव में एनडीए की सरकार राज्य में और केंद्र में भी बनाया, हमारी सोच यही थी कि केंद्र सरकार से इस तरह की मदद हमें मिलना चाहिए। उसको पूरी तरह से नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने वो एश्योरेंस को पूरी तरह से उन्होंने निभाया, वो दर्शाया आज बजट के रूप में। तो इसके लिए हम दिल से आंध्र प्रदेश की तरफ से प्रधानमंत्री जी को धन्यवाद देना चाहेंगे।
अमरावती के लिए एक ग्रांट दिया था 15,000 करोड़ का, और पोलर लोन का भी बात किया था, और इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर का भी बात किया था, और एडिशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फंड भी बात किया था, और बैकवर्ड डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स के बारे में भी बात किया था। हमारा मुख्यमंत्री भी ऐसे है, वो हर दिन क्या करना है और क्या ले आना है, दिल्ली से क्या ले आना है, और इंडस्ट्री कौन सा न्यू इंडस्ट्रीज ले आना है, वो ही सोच रहा है। इसीलिए हमें वी आर हैप्पी, बट वी विल मेक श्योर दैट वी विल पुट ऑल द एफर्ट्स टू गेट मोर फंड्स टू द स्टेट।
Meanwhile, political showdown also has escalated on this, and Congress Chief Mallikarjun Kharge has slammed the Modi government's budget. This Union Budget 2024-25, Congress President Kharge has said, I quote an excerpt from his statement, "This is a disappointing budget," he's called it. It's meant only to save the government's chair because most of the chunk that has been announced for the alliance partner. Now, according to Kharge, the expectation was that MSP on crops, subsidy on pesticides would be announced. That hasn't been met. About accidents in the railway sector, that hasn't been addressed either, specifically with regard to passenger safety. Let's listen in then to elaborate comments coming in from Mallikarjun Kharge.
प्रोजेक्ट देखने के बाद ऐसा लगा कि उन्होंने दो मित्रों को खुश करने को छोड़ के दूसरे किसी को भी 140 करोड़ जनता को उन्होंने अलग रखा, और दो मित्रों को उन्होंने साथ लेकर कुर्सी बचाने का काम किया है।
The first union budget for 2024-25 in the third term of Shri Narendra Modi ji government stands as a testament to India's commitment to inclusive growth, sustainable development and economic resilience. This visionary budget not only addresses the immediate needs of the nation, but also lays down a robust framework for a long-term prosperity by prioritizing infrastructure development, technological innovation and social welfare. It paves the way for a more prosperous and equitable India. The budget's forward-looking policies and strategic investments are poised to accelerate growth, create jobs, and enhance the quality of life for all citizens.
And it appears that Nirmala Sitharaman has responded to all the allegations by the opposition party, specifically led by the Congress party. Nirmala Sitharaman has in fact said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been decided and has been put on this chair by the people. The opposition has no right to say that Prime Minister is saving his chair. The fact that this whole alliance, the India bloc, could not even put together 230 seats. It is people who put Narendra Modi on the chair, and that he's not saving it by any way. So let's listen in now. This is what Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, has said.
जिन इंडी अलायंस का मेंबर्स
साथ होकर के भी 230 पार नहीं किया और जहां बीजेपी अकेला 240 तक पहुंचे और प्री इलेक्शन अलायंस के साथ आज सरकार तीसरी बार बनाए 37 पार्टीज कुल मिलाकर के 230 पार नहीं किया और वो बोल रहे हैं कुर्सी बचाने के लिए। कुर्सी बचाने वाले बात बोलने का अर्हत अधिकार उनके पास नहीं होता है।
So clearly the opposition parties, the India bloc, not happy at all with the budget. They are calling it a disappointing budget. They are even slamming the Modi 3.0 budget this year. And they are saying that this is not for the people, not for India, but for the allies, Janata Dal United and the Telugu Desam Party. Rahul Gandhi specifically led the charges and trained guns at the government, calling this budget as Kursi Bachao budget, save the chair budget. He's even claimed that this year's budget is a copy-paste of the Congress manifesto. Bengal, of course, also jumped in. The TMC also snubbing the government, saying why the state of Bengal was forgotten. Sena Uddabala Sahib Thackeray, meanwhile, in Maharashtra, took on the government at the centre for not including Maharashtra's development, calling it Pradhan Mantri Sarkar Bachao Yojana. So each of these parties giving their own twist and turn, even referring and as a jibe to the policies of the government. The opposition has said that this year's budget is nothing but a bid to save Modi Sarkar, since the BJP is dependent on JDU and Telugu Desam Party over the results and as an alliance. And this was because Andhra Pradesh and Bihar did get special packages specifically for their development and infrastructure work.
सरकार बचानी है तो अच्छी बात है कि बिहार को, आंध्र प्रदेश को कुछ विशेष पैकेज या विशेष योजनाओं से जोड़ा गया है। बेरोजगारी इन्होंने बढ़ाई है। 10 साल में जो इतनी बेरोजगारी बढ़ गई, उसको कैसे कम करें, और वो भी आधी अधूरी नौकरी से। आप 2 साल की, 1 साल की या कुछ ट्रेनिंग करा करके नौकरी या रोजगार का सपना दिखा रहे हैं। देश का नौजवान अपना भविष्य बनाने के लिए पक्की नौकरी चाहता है, और फिर जो आधी अधूरी नौकरी है, क्या उसमें आरक्षण होगा?
निर्मला सीताराम ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಅಭಿಮಾನ ಇತ್ತು. ಅವರು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕಕ್ಕೆ ರಕ್ಷಣೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಹಣ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಅನೇಕ ಯೋಜನೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಯಾವ್ದು ಪೆಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅದಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಇತ್ತು. ಅವರು ಗಮನ ಸೆಳೆಯಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಏನಿದ್ರು ಅವ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಉಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಕ್ಕೆ ಬಿಹಾರ, ಆಂಧ್ರ ಪ್ರದೇಶ ಅವರು ಮಾತ್ರ ಗಮನಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಬಿಹಾರ ಮತ್ತು ಆಂಧ್ರ ಪ್ರದೇಶ ಮಾತ್ರ ಗಮನಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಬೇರೆ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳಿಗೆ ಅವರು ಗಮನಿಸಿಲ್ಲ. ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಇರುವಂತಹ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳಿಗೆ, ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಇರುವಂತಹ ರಾಜ್ಯಗಳಿಗೆ ಯಾವ ತರದ ಗಮನನೂ ಇಲ್ಲ.
I understand their political compulsions of pandering to the demands of their alliance partners from Andhra and Bihar, and they have, I think, acceded to their demands to some extent. But they have also taken some elements from our manifesto, particularly the apprentice scheme. So we'll have to see whether they have also announced a lot of new schemes, which are tongue-twisting names which I can't pronounce, whether they are new schemes or whether they're just rebranding old schemes, and we'll have to see what has happened to the old schemes as well.
वित्त मंत्री का ये बजट बहुत ही निराशजनक था, क्योंकि ये पूरा बजट सरकार की कमजोरी और अस्थिरता का उदाहरण था। पूरा बजट मानो 2 प्रदेशों को और 2 विशेष राजनीतिक दल को तवज्जो दे रहा था, क्योंकि सरकार को कहीं ना कहीं अपनी कुर्सी बचानी है। तो सिर्फ कुर्सी बचाने के लिए ये पूरा बजट का सत्र बुलाया गया है। यहाँ पे मध्यम वर्ग, किसानों और बेरोजगार को ना कुछ मिला है। हाँ, वे उद्योगपति जो सरकार को, भाजपा को चंदा देते हैं, उनको नए नए तरीके मिले हैं कि कैसे वो अपना मुनाफा बढ़ा सके। तो पूरी तरीके से ये बजट व्यर्थ, कुर्सी बचाओ और उद्योगपति को और धनी करो का बजट ये हमें देखने को मिला।
I think this budget should be called Pradhan Mantri Sarkar Bachao Yojana, because they have realized that this government, if it has to be saved for the next 5 years, they would need their alliance partners, and these alliance partners need to be kept happy. two states that have been focused of is Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. After denying Bihar a special status, after denying Andhra Pradesh a special status, they've given funds. What is unfortunate, however, is that Maharashtra continues to be ignored by the centre. Maharashtra has become a state where you keep sucking in money from, a cash-rich state where you keep taking money from, but do not give it money for its infrastructure needs and its development.
So the political showdown has already erupted after the budget speech, and more highlights will continue through the evening. I'm heading to a very short break. After a break, I'll take you on the ground. Preeti Chaudhary brings you a conversation with the farmers, because eventually it is as much about the agriculture sector as it is about the industry experts. What are the farmers of India saying? After a break with Preeti Chaudhary, a special segment.
क्लियर टैक्स पे टैक्स फाइलिंग है नेक्स्ट लेवल ईज नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज क्लियर टैक्स इधर नहीं तो किधर
क्लियर टैक्स पे टैक्स फाइलिंग है नेक्स्ट लेवल ईज नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज क्लियर टैक्स इधर नहीं तो किधर
Just came around to say hello. I'm so fly. You took a nosedive. Careful when you play on my level. For you it's so. Hey hello.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra. Flip the script.
Hello Moto.
टैक्स फाइलिंग की डेडलाइन मीट करो विद नेक्स्ट लेवल ईज नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज क्लियर टैक्स इधर नहीं तो किधर
टैक्स फाइलिंग की डेडलाइन मीट करो विद नेक्स्ट लेवल ईज नेक्स्ट लेवल ब्रीज क्लियर टैक्स इधर नहीं तो किधर
Women-led development. For promoting women-led development, the budget carries an allocation of more than 3 lakh crore for schemes benefiting women and girls. This signals our government's commitment for enhancing women's role in economic development.
I want to begin by commending President Biden for a career in public service, for a long career in representing and serving our country, and for his handling of the many difficulties and challenges, personal challenges and tragedies that he suffered during his life. When I entered this race, I predicted that President Biden suffered from a degenerative condition that was not going to improve and that it would make it impossible for him to govern effectively. President Trump has a connection to the American people, a populist connection, but in many ways it's the same fraudulent connection that we saw with the DNC over the past year, concealing the real purpose of their objectives, which was to give us a president that represents corporate interests rather than the interests of the American public.
The Finance Minister has delivered the Union Budget 2024. Both the Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, and then the Prime Minister, in an address to the nation, said that there were 4 focuses of the Union Budget, and it primarily focused on 4 parts of society: women, youth, the poor, and the farmers. Has the budget delivered for one of the sections that the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister were speaking of, the farmers? We have with us members of the Bharatiya Kisan Union, farm leader Rakesh Tikait as well. There seems to be a divide, viewers, because at one hand, if there is a certain section of farmers that believe very strongly that the Finance Minister has delivered in the agrarian sector in the promise of 1,52,000 crore rupees, an investment of that to bolster production, to reduce production costs, to move towards organic farming. On the other hand, there is a huge section as well that actually believes that this has been disappointing, primarily as no mention of MSP guarantee, nothing spoken of debt relief when it comes down to diesel, when it comes down to pesticide, when it comes down to urea, little to no relief. So let's cut across to Rakesh Tikait and leaders from the Bharatiya Kisan Union to get an understanding on how they view this budget. बहुत शुक्रिया टिकैत साहब और आप सब लोगों का जो हमारे साथ आज जुड़े हैं। जो बजट की अनाउंसमेंट हुई है, प्रधानमंत्री ने भी फिर बोला, पहले जो फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर हैं उन्होंने भी, वित्त मंत्री ने भी कहा था कि 4 सोसाइटी के, समाज के 4 भागों पे फोकस होगा, जो बिल्कुल पुअर हैं उन पे, जो महिलाएं हैं, जो किसान, जो आप हैं और जो युवा यूथ है। किसानों के लिए क्या इस बजट खरा उतरा है आपके हिसाब से?
देखो, किसानों के लिए तो कुछ इस बजट में है नहीं। अगर पूरा बजट कितने का है उसका लगाओ तो 3-4% ये गांव के लिए दिया है उन्होंने, किसान के लिए दिया है। इससे कुछ होने वाला नहीं है। आप एमएसपी गारंटी कानून में क्या करा, आप उसमें रिलीफ दे देते ना। आप बिजली पर रिलीफ दो ना उनको, जो डायरेक्ट किसानों को जिससे फायदा होगा आप उस पर रिलीफ दो। आप पानी पर दो। आप जो इक्विपमेंट है उस पर क्या जीएसटी छूट होगी? इसका ज्यादा फर्क पड़ेगा नहीं। ये बहुत सेक्टर में पैसा बटेगा जितना दिया है। ये बहुत से नए नए सेक्टर आएंगे एग्रीकल्चर के, उसमें धीरे धीरे पैसा हर विभागों में चला जाएगा। आप देख लेना किस विभाग में लगेगा। गांव को फायदा जब होगा जब उसकी सीधे फसलों की खरीद होगी, उसका दूध के किसानों को कुछ रिलीफ मिलेगा तो महिलाओं को सीधा रिलीफ मिलेगा। अब ये कौन सी महिलाओं को बात कर रहे हैं? महिलाएं तो गांव में काम करती है, जो भूमिहीन किसान है, भूमिहीन महिलाएं हैं, जो दूध का काम करती है, जो कढ़ाई बुनाई का काम करती है, क्या उनको कोई रिलीफ मिलेगा? हेल्थ पे आप दो कि गांव के लोग हैं, इतना बजट हम हेल्थ पे लगाएंगे, इतना एजुकेशन पे लगाएंगे, आप उसकी भी तो बात कर दो ना। ये कम है, इससे कुछ होने जाना वाला नहीं है। जब तक फसलों के दाम ठीक नहीं होंगे तो किसान को तो कोई फायदा होने वाला है नहीं।
टिकैत साहब, अगर आप हिस्ट्री में भी जाइए, इतनी बड़ी राशि जो दी गई है, हम 1.5 लाख करोड़ की बात कर रहे हैं, जो आपका कहते हैं जो प्रोडक्शन है उसकी कॉस्ट को कम करेगा, 90 से ऊपर नई वैरायटी जो फसलों की है वो लेके आएगा, जो लॉन्ग टर्म में हेल्प करेगी। ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग, नेचुरल फार्मिंग की जो बात कर रहे हैं उसमें असिस्ट 1 करोड़ कह रहे हैं, 1 करोड़ किसानों को असिस्ट होगा उसमें। तो ये आपको नहीं लगता कि इससे फायदा होगा किसान का?
ये ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम चलते रहते हैं। ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग सब किसान जानता है करनी, क्या उसकी कोई मार्केटिंग है? कहां उसको ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग में लाभ हो रहा? ये कुछ संगठन होंगे, कुछ संस्थाएं होंगी जिनके पास में ऑर्गेनिक का बजट जाएगा। वे किसानों को ट्रेनिंग देंगे ऑर्गेनिक करने की, 2-2 दिन की, 3-3 दिन की। उसका जो बजट है वो सब ऐसे ही खाया जाता है। ऑर्गेनिक की आप मार्केट दो। जो इसने कहा कि हम नए सीड लेकर आएंगे, नए सीड क्या ये जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड सीड लेकर आ रहे? मेंसेंटो, माहिको, सेंजिंटा जो ये कंपनियां हैं, क्या इनके सीड लेकर आएंगे? क्या मल्टीनेशनल कंपनी के सीड यहाँ पे लेकर आएंगे?
स्पष्ट करना उसका फ्यूचर जो है, देखो फार्मिंग का फ्यूचर बिल्कुल आगे अगर बढ़ना है, अगर आपको इवॉल्व करना है तो यही रास्ता है।
ये रास्ता है। आप भाव की गारंटी तो दोगे ना, भाव की गारंटी दो, किसान पैदा कर लेगा। भाव की गारंटी दो। क्या सीड, हमने बार बार कहा कि सीड वे मल्टीनेशनल कंपनी के सीड देश में आएंगे, उसका जो रिजल्ट है, जो उसके बुक है, जो उसकी कमी है, उसकी जो बुक है, उसको आप डिक्लेरेशन करो ना, उसको कि इस सीड में ये है, ये इसमें बीमारी लगेगी, ये नहीं लगेगी, आप उसका डिक्लेरेशन करो।
जो स्किल डेवलपमेंट की बात है, अप्रेंटिसशिप की बात है, इंटर्नशिप की बात है, जो युवा के लिए है, वो आपके लड़कों तक, लड़कियों तक भी पहुंचेगा ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में?
नहीं, ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में उसकी तो योजनाएं चल रही है ना, स्किल्ड लेबर की तो चल रही है। हमने तो कहा कि इस देश में जो प्रोग्रामिंग चल रहा है वो यही तो है कि ये देश लेबर कंट्री बने आने वाले टाइम पे, और एग्रीकल्चर से ध्यान हटे। हम कह रहे हैं कि उस पर प्रोग्राम करें, आप दोस्त पे स्किल्ड उसके प्रोग्राम जो है वे चलने चाहिए, लेकिन उनको चलाओ, क्या वे धरातल पर चल रहे हैं? क्या उसका फंड कहाँ जा रहा है? आप पिछला 2-3 साल का डाटा उठा कर देख लो, जो स्किल्स का फंड है वो कहाँ जा रहा है? क्या वे इंस्टीट्यूट चल रहे हैं? क्या बड़ी बड़ी संस्थाएं यहाँ से दिल्ली से पैसा लेकर जाती है? क्या वे स्किल्स पे काम कर रहे हैं? उस पैसे का बंदरबांट कैसे हो रहा? क्या कितने पॉलिटिकल लोग हैं, उनका डाटा सार्वजनिक होना चाहिए कि किन किन के पास में वो स्किल्ड का पैसा गया है, उन्हें कौन से लोगों को। स्किल्ड का मतलब है कि हम सिर्फ एक सर्टिफिकेट उनको देंगे कि आप की ट्रेनिंग पूरी होगी। ये सब बंदरबांट होता है पैसा। आप सीधा फंड की व्यवस्था गांव के लोगों करो, उसके हेल्थ पे दो, एजुकेशन पे दो, उनको डायरेक्ट सब्सिडी दो। एमएसपी गारंटी कानून क्यों नहीं है? किसानों का कर्जा माफ पे कितना इन्होंने दिया है? तो इन सब चीजों पे भी होना चाहिए।
सर, आप अपना नाम बताइए। आप भारतीय किसान यूनियन से हैं?
हाँ जी।
नाम बताइए। आपकी प्रतिक्रिया है इस बजट को लेकर? 1.5 लाख राशि का अनाउंसमेंट हुआ है आज, 1.5 लाख करोड़।
मेरा नाम है जी करण पन्नू, मैं भारतीय किसान यूनियन टिकैत से जुड़ा हुआ हूँ जी। जो ये राशि है, इसमें घोषणाएं तो सरकार बहुत बड़ी बड़ी करती है, पिछले 70-75 सालों से यही चल रहा है।
कर लो इसको।
हाँ, बोलिए।
70-75 साल से यही घोषणाएं हो रही हैं। किसान के लिए जो भी बजट बनते हैं, उससे जो बड़े बड़े यही नेता हैं, यही अपना मिल बांट के खा जाते हैं। हमारे तक तो कुछ नहीं पहुंच रहा जी। अगर एक चीज मांगी है हमने, एमएसपी का कानून मांगा है, जिसके लिए 13 महीने पहले एक आंदोलन चलता रहा। एक एमएसपी का कानून अगर वाकई में सरकार चाहती है कि किसान सक्षम हो, तो एक एमएसपी का कानून बना दे, हम अपने आप पैदा कर लेंगे। हम इनसे कोई भीख नहीं मांगते, हम अपना हक मांग रहे हैं खाली एक एमएसपी पे। और ये जो 1.5 लाख करोड़, 2 लाख करोड़, ये एक जुमले हैं, इससे ज्यादा और कुछ नहीं है जी।
क्या एक्सपेक्टेशंस थी आपकी? कैसे देखते थे इस बजट को? क्या चाहते थे कि सबसे पहले कम से कम ये हो जाए? कोई आशा थी इस बजट से?
आशा तो बहुत थी जी, आशा के ही ऊपर बैठे हैं सब लोग। हम तो उम्मीद पर जीते हैं, किसान उम्मीद पर जीता है। अभी जो फसल बो रहे हैं, अगर बाढ़ आ जाती है, सूखा में अगर हमारी फसल खत्म हो जाती है, तो किसान तो फिर खड़ा होता है और फिर फसल बोता है। उसे उम्मीद होती है कि हम फिर से खड़े होंगे, और उम्मीद थी हमें कि अब की बार सरकार कुछ हमें देगी। लेकिन हमें यही क्लियर नहीं हो रहा कि इसी बजट में, जिसको आप बार बार कह रहे हो 1.5 लाख करोड़ दिया, क्या वाकई ये किसान को अभी शोर मचाने के लिए दिया गया? अभी कुछ दिन पीछे कहा जाएगा कि आपको किसान सम्मान निधि दी जा रही है, वो किसान सम्मान निधि भी इसी में जोड़ी जा रही है। फिर उसका एक एडवर्टाइजमेंट होगा कि हमने किसान को सम्मान निधि दी, वो 3 किस्तों में दी जाएगी। पहले 2-3 महीने तक शोर मचेगा, फिर उसको देंगे, फिर शोर मचेगा, फिर उसको देंगे। मतलब आप इतने बड़े, जो यहाँ पर बड़े बड़े सर्किलों को आप पैसा देते हो, उसका भी क्या आप इसी तरीका से शोर मचाते हो? जितना भी आपने बड़े लोगों की, पूंजीपतियों के पैसे माफ किए किसान के लिए, जो अभी टिकैत साहब बोल रहे थे कि आप किसानों को जो लोन, जो कर्ज है उस पर, उसे कितना आपने माफ करने का इसमें प्रावधान लिया है? वो आपके पास है कुछ उसमें कि उन्होंने कितना कर्ज माफ करने के लिए इसमें प्रावधान दिया है? हमारी फसल जो यहाँ ये बार बार कहते थे कि आप कहीं भी ले जाकर के बेच सकते हो, उस स्ट्रक्चर पे किसान के लिए क्या लाभ दिया है कि किसान अपनी फसल को ले जाने के लिए, और हम अपनी दिल्ली या हरियाणा ले जाने के लिए हमको डायरेक्ट सब्सिडी में क्या लाभ मिलेगा? अगर हमें डीजल लेना होगा किसान को, तो क्या वो हमें सस्ता मिलेगा? जो मर्सिडीज गाड़ी में चलने वाला, उसको भी वही रेट मिलेगा? अगर ट्रैक्टर का टायर पर जो जीएसटी होगी, वही मर्सिडीज गाड़ी की टायर पे भी जीएसटी होगी। हमारी बुग्गी के टायर पर जो जीएसटी लगती है, उसी पर वो लगेगी। जो हमारे कीटनाशक, खरपतवार हैं, उन सब पर जीएसटी लगाई जाएंगी। तो हम कैसे सरवाइव कर पाएंगे? और अगर उसमें आपको इस तरीका का कोई बजट में कोई चीज लेकर आनी थी तो उसको बताइए कि हम इतना पैसा इन चीजों पर खर्च करेंगे। डायरेक्ट किसान के खाते में अगर पैसा जाता है तो उनको ये बताया जाना चाहिए कि हमने पूंजीपतियों को लाभ नहीं देना, हमें किसान को लाभ देना। ये तो सब पूंजीपतियों को हुआ। जो भंडारण बढ़ाने की बात कही है प्रीति जी, इनमें बार बार उन्होंने कहा कि हम भंडारण बढ़ाएंगे। किसान की ताकत है कि वो भंडारण कर ले।
भंडारण बढ़ाने को कह रहे हैं कि आपको नई वैरायटी के बीज लेके आएंगे। ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग से 1 करोड़ जो कृषि हैं, फार्मर्स हैं, उनको फायदा पहुंचेगा। अब आगे अगर एवोल्यूशनराइज करना है, आगे बढ़ना है, तो एक कम से कम पाथ तो दिखाया है, कह रहे हैं।
किसान से ज्यादा ऑर्गेनिक कोई कर नहीं सकता। किसान के घर में खेती और खाद जो है वो घर से होता है। उसे पता है कि अभी आपके खेत, आपके पीछे जो है मक्का का खेत है, उसे पता है कि इसमें कितना यूरिया हमें यूरिया लगाना है या हमें यहाँ पर जो जैविक खाद है वो लगाना है। वो क्या बताएंगे जो चमकीली कोठियों में बैठे हैं हमारा कि इसमें क्या होगा? कोई देख करके गया है इसमें कि इसमें क्या खरपतवार
क्या है? टिकैत साहब, तो क्या है? क्योंकि बहुत कहते हैं कि देखिए राकेश टिकैत सिर्फ नुक्स निकालते हैं सरकार के वायदों में।
मैं इसका पार्ट हूँ।
तो अगर मतलब आप कह रहे हैं पूरे जो सारे किसान हैं किसी के लिए कुछ अच्छा नहीं किया है इस बार।
हमने ये कहा कि झूठ
कुछ तो सही किया होगा।
एक सोलर पे छोड़ के उस पे कितनी सब्सिडी देंगे नेचुरल एनर्जी पे, वो थोड़ा सा लगता है कि उस पे सरकार बढ़ रही है कुछ।
तो चलिए एक अच्छी चीज तो कर रही है जो आप कह रहे हैं आपके हिसाब से।
उस पर थोड़ी सरकार बढ़ रही, लेकिन उस पर भी रूफटॉप सब्सिडी दे। हम ये भी इसलिए कह रहे हैं कि हसदेव के छत्तीसगढ़ के जंगल काटते जा रहे हैं। क्या वहां से कोयले की खदान से माइनिंग कर हम बिजली बनाएंगे? नेचुरल एनर्जी हमारे पास में बहुत है, उस पर हमारा काम होना चाहिए।
तो क्या जो भारतीय किसान यूनियन है, क्या आप लोग जो इस बजट की इंतजार में थे, क्या आपको आशा थी कि इसमें एमएसपी के बारे में, जो अगर ऋण माफी के बारे में कुछ बात होगी, और अगर नहीं हुई है क्या आंदोलन फिर से होगा?
आंदोलन को कौन रोक रहा है? यहाँ पर आंदोलन तो होगा। आंदोलन तो 9 तारीख को भी होगा। अब शुरू अभी 9 तारीख को, 9 अगस्त को हर डिस्ट्रिक्ट हेडक्वार्टर पे ट्रैक्टरों से मार्च होगा। तो आंदोलन तो याद इनको दिलाते रहना चाहिए। ये देश आंदोलन से ही बचेगा, ये सरकार और पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम से बचेगा ही नहीं।
तो राकेश टिकैत फिर खुश नहीं है सरकार से?
नहीं, हम कहाँ खुश है सरकार से? किसने कहा कि हम खुश है?
हम तो पूछ रहे हैं
ना।
नहीं,
तो खुश है नहीं है।
बजट से खुश नहीं है आप लोग? कोई है यहाँ पे जिसको लगता है कि सरकार ने ठीक काम किया है, कम से कम कुछ तो दिया है?
अगर सरकार सही काम करेगी हम क्यों गलत कहेंगे? हम यहाँ बैठे हैं, अगर हम ये अपना दुख सुना रहे हैं, अगर सरकार हमारे लिए काम करेगी तो हम उसके लिए बिल्कुल कहेंगे सरकार हमारे लिए कर रही है। हमारे लिए तो सिर्फ हमारे घरों में लोहा जो इकट्ठा करवाया जा रहा है, जो सब्सिडियों के नाम पे वो बड़ी बड़ी कंपनियों को फायदा पहुंचाया जा रहा है। किसान की जेब में ये, मुझे ये नहीं समझ आ रही है कैसा आगे बढ़ना है जो किसानों की लाशों से आगे बढ़ रहे हैं।
चलिए, बहुत शुक्रिया कि आप सब लोग आए, आप हमसे जुड़े। शुक्रिया राकेश टिकैत जी। With that, we're going to end the show. Well, the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister made it very clear that of the 4 sections that they were going to focus on, one of them would be the farmers of the country, the agrarian sector. Have they delivered? Well, at least with the farmers that we have spoken with this afternoon, and that is most of them associated with the Bharatiya Kisan Union, they are unhappy, disappointed with the union budget, at least where the demarcations for the farm sector are concerned. It's back to the studio.
Just came around to say hello. I'm so fly. You took a nosedive. Careful when you play on my level. For you it's so. Hey, hello.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra. Flip the script.
Hello, Moto.
fast tracking growth of rural economy and generation of employment opportunities on a large scale will be the policy goal. This year, I have made a provision of 1.52 lakh crore rupees for agriculture and allied sectors. Our government will undertake a comprehensive review of the agricultural research setup to bring the focus on raising productivity and developing climate-resilient varieties. Funding will be provided in challenge mode, including to the private sector. Domain experts, both from the government and outside, will oversee the conduct of such research. Release of new varieties. New 109 high-yielding and climate-resilient varieties of 32 field and horticultural crops will be released for cultivation by farmers. Natural farming. In the next 2 years, 1 crore farmers across the country will be initiated into natural farming, supported by certification and branding. Implementation will be through scientific institutions and willing gram panchayats. 10,000 need-based bio-input resource centers will be established. Fast-tracking growth of rural economy and generation of employment opportunities on a large scale will be the policy goal. This year, I have made a provision of 1.52 lakh crore rupees for agriculture and allied sectors. Our government will undertake a comprehensive review of the agricultural research setup to bring the focus on raising productivity and developing climate-resilient varieties. Funding will be provided in challenge mode, including to the private sector. Domain experts, both from the government and outside, will oversee the conduct of such research. Release of new varieties. New 109 high-yielding and climate-resilient varieties of 32 field and horticultural crops will be released for cultivation by farmers. Natural farming. In the next 2 years, 1 crore farmers across the country will be initiated into natural farming, supported by certification and branding. Implementation will be through scientific institutions and willing gram panchayats. 10,000 need-based bio-input resource centers will be established.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 39 and minimum 29 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 28 and minimum 24 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 34 and minimum 26 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 25 and minimum 20 degrees. Chennai, maximum 34 and minimum 28 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 26 and minimum 23 degrees.
Who have fallen for the scam have ended up losing a lot of money, including a Chandigarh man who lost a whopping 1 lakh rupees exactly with the same modus operandi. Have you too been a victim to such scam? What can you do really to be safe here? Here's what Mumbai's citizens really have to say.
So have you ever received a scam text message or a phone call?
Yes, I have. That happens, I guess, to all of us.
Yeah, it was just today when I received an email from an unknown email ID on my official work account saying, hi, I'm not able to reach to your mobile number. Could you provide me with an alternate contact number? It was very obvious that the scammer didn't have any of my mobile numbers and a random email ID was tried.
Have you ever received a scam text message or a phone call?
Yes, multiple times.
How do you differentiate between a scam message or a phone call versus a legitimate one?
So I think the first thing is that I have an app installed in my phone which shows me if an unknown number is calling me, it shows that it's a spam call, so I don't receive it at all.
Generally in scam messages, there are either a link is attached or the text message is generally unusual.
You have to see that the links are verified or not, because the verified links comes with a proper message.
And what measures do you personally take to stay safe online?
So now it has happened with me so many times that I often end up recording such incidents. Now whenever such a scam happens and I realize that it's a scam, I record it and share it with my friends so that they also understand that okay, this is how I can be scammed as well.
There are a few accounts on Instagram which keep you updated and they keep telling you about the new scams that are coming in the market. So I tend to follow those. I try to look at a few YouTube videos where they tell us about the scams.
Before trusting anybody, just make sure that the guy or the girl you're sending details to.
So usually with context to messages, I usually block the unusual messages. And with respect to online, whenever I do transaction online, I usually do it from the Chrome, and generally I don't give my card details to any fishy sites unless and until I'm aware of the site.
I have to tell you, you guys have a huge fan following in India. We love your characters. We invest so much into that. And you absolutely give us joy when we sit down and watch this. It's absolutely pure joy. Have to ask you, have you ever had India on your bucket list to travel or maybe watch a movie or just get to know song and dance?
Yes.
Oh God, yes.
Love India so much. I lived in India for 6 months when I was a teenager, when I was 18 after school.
Whereabouts?
And I lived in just outside Bangalore in a tiny little village called Silvapura. And it was the days before, it was like the 80s. It was the days before Bangalore became and it was just this tiny little town. And I lived in this, and I went very native, and I was wearing a sari and doing, cooking with the things. I remember the first morning I woke up and somebody was a wonderful person with a bucket of this brown steaming stuff and slapping it onto the floor of the hut that I was sleeping in. And it was cow dung.
Oh, wow.
And then she was making the floor.
Oh my God.
It was amazing.
That is fantastic. It is on my bucket list.
Much.
Yeah, I would love to, because I mean, it sounds so really superficial, but I love the cuisine. I love the food. So I would love to be there. And I've seen pictures of the place. I've seen the Taj Mahal and stuff like that. Yeah, one day.
Such an incredible country.
My God, I can't wait.
My favorite country. I mean, I was visited like such a small part of it, but gosh, what an amazing place.
One day.
Amazing place.
Invite us.
One day, jump on a dragon and fly away, and we will host you. We would love to.
Please have us.
Right, you said that. It's going to happen. We're going to turn up at your door.
Thank you, Stephen. You absolutely love you. Thank you for this wonderful chat.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
You are watching India Today.
Stand by now for the big Supreme Court verdict, and this order will be on the NET controversy. We are told that as I speak, the Chief Justice of India and the bench is dictating the order on the NET. The Supreme Court has already made an observation that systematic deficiencies were seen in conducting examination. That's already a huge remark coming in, that it does appear to be more systematic than perhaps a few individuals who decided to either leak or were indulgent in a malpractice of this NET examination. Remember when it comes
on jobonomics. An admission by the government that jobs need to be taken as the central economic and political priority, and they've thrown some financial ammunition at trying to address this challenge. On the one side, you've got an admission. The question, though, is will it work? The government introducing employment-linked incentives, the government introducing internship incentives. Does this in any way change the hiring outlook in corporate India? Because if the question is of job creation, that's really what it boils down to. Will any company hire more because of these new government schemes? To talk about this, I'm joined by a very distinguished and eminent panel here at the India Today CII Budget Roundtable. I want to start by introducing the president of CII for this year, Sanjeev Puri. Thank you very much, Mr. Puri, for joining us. He's also the chairman and managing director of ITC Limited. Flanking him, we've got Rajiv Memani. Rajiv Memani heads up Ernst & Young in India. Mr. Memani, welcome. Great to have you with us. To my left is R. Mukundan, who heads Tata Chemicals as its CEO. Flanking him, we've got Vaishali Nigam Sinha, co-founder and chairperson for sustainability at Renew Power. Welcome. Joining us in a changed capacity this time. We had him in the interim budget. That time he was batting for the other side. Gaurav Vallabh, spokesperson of the BJP. Thank you and appreciate you joining us. So Deepak Shetty is with us. He is the CEO and Managing Director of JCB India. Welcome, sir. So let me start by asking Sanjeev Puri. Typically, companies have a fixed employment outlook for the year based on their projections of demand, based on their assessment of how much revenue they're likely to generate. Now the government says, not just to you, but to everyone in general, that we'd like you to hire more and therefore we're offering these additional incentives. Do you think the package of incentives that have been offered actually increase the amount of jobs that get created?
Okay, let me first start by saying that, you know, the whole premise is one, of course, of creating jobs. Second is about employability, because today you do find positions that are vacant and you're not able to get enough people. And the third is also about quality of jobs and incomes. So if you look at the budget holistically, I think it addresses all these three. I think just the resource part of the incentive is one piece of it. So there's a lot of impetus on skilling and education, lot of schemes there involving top 500 corporates, etc. When we come to this whole area about quality of incomes, that's about formalization, it's about agriculture productivity. That's where the quality of incomes will go up. So that's been squarely addressed. As far as the specific resources that are being allocated for as incentives to employment, I think employment linked scheme is something that I think the industry was also recommending, CII was recommending it. So what that it does provide impetus to both formalization, and it provides impetus to additional opportunities getting created. Like it's about when you're kick-starting a system, just like the PLI, you're providing some incentives. These incentives are not there forever. So the initial factor cost of starting are actually getting moderated, and therefore that will provide some impetus. So that's the whole idea.
So that's the idea.
That's the whole idea, and that's what industry also had suggested employee-linked incentive.
Rajiv Amani, do you have an outlook for how many more additional jobs may potentially be created because of the employment-linked incentives that the government has offered? One is talk. I'm trying to understand what is the actual action and outcome.
See, I think Sanjeev captured it very well. The most important thing, Rahul, in this is the intent of the government. And I think the intent of the government, how do jobs get created? Jobs get created because government provides the nudges. I think these are the nudges that the government has provided. You have a strong economy and you have resilience in the economy. So it's not just today, but the next 5 years. So, if you look at the quality of macroeconomics and everything else, so it encourages people, makes them more confident to hire. So to answer your specific question, it may not impact the largest 10, 15, 20, 50 companies to make a difference, but for generally for mid-market companies, for MSMEs, and directionally, it's very clear that for anyone who's there, you always try and align yourself with where the policy is going, that the government wants you to hire more youngsters coming out of college. They want you to train more people.
But they've always wanted to.
No, but they're putting money where their mouth is. I think this kind of incentive has never been provided. A new person who gets a job gets paid 45,000 rupees by the government, 15,000 rupees per month. So imagine, Rahul, if you were first time joining a news channel and someone told you that, you are going to get 45,000 rupees, that's a big deal from an Indian perspective, maybe.
No, sure, but ultimately that particular news channel or whichever organization has to decide that they want that person on board. That comes down to employment outlook and whether any company feels, and I want to bring in Chandrajit Banerjee because he's been pushing for employment-linked incentives. Now you have them. Now the question is, do you have an estimate for CII on how many additional jobs you think could potentially get created as a consequence of these new incentives?
See, this issue that industry faces, and we keep talking about the mismatch between what you require and the people with those expertise and skills. This particular scheme I see being able to be an enabler where you get great exposure. Say, for instance, for the large companies that was talked about, 500.
That's incentives for internships.
Internships.
I'm talking about employment-linked incentives, and I'm trying to understand on behalf of our viewers whether it creates more net jobs than what companies would have wanted to create in the absence of these incentives.
So just like the PLI had done, increased production and increased investment in those particular sectors, here we will see the companies who are able to invest or employ more are being incentivized to employ more. They would obviously be able to show that because today people need to employ. There is a gap of employment, and this really facilitates them to take in more. The numbers will come. You've heard about the numbers. We spoke about certain numbers in the budget estimates itself. But I do see a lot coming in because even the mid-sized companies would be able to do that.
No, but for example, You decide on behalf of Hindustan Unilever, I'm just making up the numbers, that you want to hire 1,000 people this year. Now you have these incentives. Rajiv Memani is telling us you will get 45,000 rupees, which is me entering the job market for the first time. Why do these incentives take up your number from 1,000 to 1,100?
See, I think we have to look at this whole subject holistically.
Yes.
It's about employment and employability.
Correct.
Employability itself will add to the headcount. Today, you've heard there have been media reports that there are certain requirements and the resources are not available. So, moment you increase employability, more jobs will be, headcount will be added. It's not that new jobs are added, but there are open
so
positions.
So not in companies like yours, they can train in companies like yours and work with some of the MSME companies.
That's the second part of it. I'm saying even large companies, the large companies who have announced they do not have the pipeline of the trained resources to hire. I have so many 25,000 open. So what this is doing is that it is putting a lot of focus on employability by giving exposure to first timers by apprenticeship, etc. So once the pool of skilled employees is increased, more headcount will get added. And of course, for smaller companies, it is a much larger benefit. It provides the financial incentives and it provides the skilled resources. So we have to look at
provided they have the appetite to want to hire.
So appetite
is there in the industry to hire, and when you are linking it to EPFO, you are actually helping formalization of jobs. And the numbers that have been talked about are something like a 210 lakh crore, 210 lakhs, 10 lakh people who can be impacted with that.
No, because if it gets added to the employee provident
That's
fund,
right, and so you are helping
then
formalization.
The employer has to also deal with all the current labor laws in the way
so
that
that's
they
why
exist.
we are also parallelly talking about labor, the factor market reforms, which include labor in a big way.
Which as of now is talk, and there hasn't been action on it.
It has been told that if the states do, states will be incentivized. But that carrot and stick type of a thing has been given, that states which do second gen reforms will be incentivized more. So that part has been well mentioned in the budget.
But there's also the politics of these factors of production reforms. We saw what happened with the land acquisition bill. We also saw what happened when the farm bills were tried to be changed by the government. I want to go across to Gaurav.
Yes, this is real money going in, especially in MSMEs and others. This is real money going in the hand. So
no, so do you see some people who were earlier in the informal sector now being formally brought on the rolls?
Correct, absolutely. And this is real money going through.
No, but take for example a mid-sized company. It's very easy for him to have contractual workers. The moment he brings them on board, he has to deal with labor laws as they exist at the moment, not what Chandrajit Banerjee is saying. At some point in time, that particular state government may reform those labor laws.
They're already dealing with 150. They'll probably deal with 200. So it's not that difficult that if you're dealing with 150, you can't deal with 200. It's also a question of economics, where you're not sure how long you want to keep, tenure and everything. This is government providing financial incentive. People will make their own decisions. But I'm presuming that financial incentive will make a decision more towards leaning towards hiring more than...
No, but I haven't heard anyone say so far on their own behalf that this enhances my own employment outlook. Mr. Mukundan, you want to say it with everyone saying, okay, this will have a benefit on employability for MSMEs, we'll train them up, which is understandable, but Vaishali, do you feel this way, that this will increase the number of people you were planning to hire vis-a-vis what you were trying to hire previously?
So I can probably give you an anecdotal example.
Yes.
When we were executing our expansion project, it came down to shortage of welders.
Okay.
Our project got delayed by almost 3 months because shortage of welders. Now, you can't train them overnight because these are very specialized skills. I think fundamentally what we are saying is these are friction in the job market which we need to ease. And
no, but where will these welders get trained in the new, in the big 500 companies? You'll have these internships for which you'll get incentives, but they're not probably for welding, right?
So we actually got some of these people out of colleges, out of those diploma schools, and trained them in our plant.
That's fine.
Perfect.
You're upskilling. I'm saying, how do these current new set of incentives deal with the welder problem, for example?
So it's not an isolated issue, Rahul. I think the way what I would say is that, is there an impetus for growth in the budget?
Sure.
There is certainly an impetus for growth in the budget. Is there an impetus to improve competitiveness through focus on logistics and power sector reforms and moving ahead on that? There is certainly that will certainly grow the GDP. Manufacturing sector grew by 9%. But really when you go and meet the companies on the field, I can clearly tell you, while jobs is an issue in the community, the companies are saying, I don't have skilled manpower. The shortage is very, very apparent. That's what Chandrajit has been highlighting. And how do you bridge the gap? Bridging the gap comes from having a workforce which is rightly skilled, And that skilling is one issue we have not focused on. In India, the focus has mostly been getting graduation degrees, college degrees, but not the skill.
What you're saying is true in general, Vaishali. I'm trying to understand the specific outcome of this budget announcement. And I haven't heard from anyone saying, I will hire more as a result of these employment-linked incentives.
Rahul, you're raising a good point,
Yes.
but just stepping back again, and again, not, of course, it's going to help. And it's not only this, but it's also the whole approach, the broad approach towards, skilling, capacity building, inclusivity. So if you look at, the hub and spoke for capacity building and engaging institutions, hiring, first-time job seekers, and the government saying that we are going to give you your first salary. I think this is messaging to say
no,
that...
it's messaging. I understand the messaging.
Right.
I'm trying to
And
understand
incentives.
and distill outcomes, potential
Right.
outcomes. Right?
Outcomes will be that our sector needs a lot of people to get to work. We need more women. So the whole issue about the hostels and the creches sounds like, nice to do. But honestly, if we want to get more women on our sites, these are absolutely critical. So it's going to help in us employing more women. It's going to help us to provide internships, because we do need a broad base of people who get skilled. Now, coming and working with us for a year is going to give them a brush to our sector, which will probably give them the base to go and look for other jobs.
But Gaurav, you've seen what the challenge is here. Everyone's saying the messaging is on point, and it is. The government is accepting that employability, employment, jobs is a central challenge, and they've put some muscle and money behind it. What is the end outcome? I'm saying, how far have we thought that through? So you've given some incentive. Now you have something to say. But what happens at the end? That's what I'm trying to understand. Have you thought that through?
Rahul, if we had gone through the India Employment Report 2024, one of the basic challenge was that there was no linking of the employment and the employability issue, which was highlighted by the previous speakers. But the answer to your question lies with the 5 schemes. You have to look into these 5 schemes comprehensively. One scheme says that I will train in 500 top companies, 1 crore, 21 to 24 age group interns.
Another these are largely big companies, right? So high turnover companies.
So they are providing a pool. Now the second scheme says that if you are going to hire, the 1 month salary will be contributed. So 2.1 crore people are going to get the employment under this. The third scheme says that we will provide employers with 3,000 rupees per month for their contribution in their PF. So that formalization should happen. The fourth scheme says that we will also train 20 lakh young people for the MSME sector in ITIs with the help of the state government.
Which you've been trying to do in any case.
And the fifth and the last scheme says that we are more focused of creating jobs in the manufacturing sector. That is what government is intended to do. The employment-centric manufacturing is the key of one of the key of this budget. So we have to think of this. This is a holistic, from the supply to getting the final job. The formalization of the economy is happening, and this is how these all 5 schemes are interlinked to each other.
But I'll compare it, if I can, briefly to say Agniveer, right? So you have these interns, they come and work with the 500 top companies. During the course of the internship, they acquire new skills. Now, like when you retire from the army, you're available for employment in any of the central paramilitary forces. But ultimately, you still need a job, right? So it comes down to that, Gaurav. That, okay, so you have this internship,
Actually, Rahul,
and then what?
That is where I think the minister...
One minute, Mukund. For example, Mukund wants to hire me, but I don't have that skill. But for example, I am getting internship in the Mukund's company, and I am getting for 1 year, and Mukund is not paying anything. The entire 1 year internship, the money is paid by the government. So Mukund will say, okay, let him do some work, see what he is doing, and after 1 year, Mukund is going to hire me because I had done free internship for Mukund's company. So I am now trained on the expense of government for Mukund's company. So he is going to hire me now.
Provided Mukund has the outlook and desire and appetite to want to hire more than otherwise. To some extent, for small and mid companies outside of the big 500, it does address the challenge. Yes.
Add a point. I think the minister also said they're going to bring a digital platform where people getting skilled and trained in these 500 companies, their details are going to be available for people who want to employ them. So this is actually, there's a sixth level which is added to that, to say that not only, see, these 500 companies are the ones which will have training facilities. Firstly, I think it's not that MSME are going to have training facilities. So she is focused on these companies to say, listen, I think you provide the training to them and provide them high quality training so that these are extremely skilled. Then their data actually goes into the central network and it is available for MSME in Aurangabad who wants to hire, who are the people with this skill set available for me. And also, I think at some point they will also bring out a system by which the people who want to get employed can also look at the companies where these jobs are available and link them together. I think that is the missing piece. If you look at our own issue of employment exchanges, which were all started, they were all physical. Now they're moving to a digital platform. And I think these are the steps in the right direction to build the...
Sure. So, no, the fact that the messaging is on point cannot be questioned. What we have to look at is ultimately what the likely outcome is.
So now let me just add to that. Okay, or maybe after him, Let me
so Deepak Shetty, just listen to my question. Now you've got these interns who come to the big 500 companies. These are interns you didn't necessarily want, but now the government is paying for them and you're kind of trying to play along. So you say, okay, aajao. How do you ensure that they are gainfully employed for 1 year and that they actually acquire the skills? We've seen in the United States, for example, when such incentives were given, a lot of fudging happening, and if it happens in the United States, in India, jugaad goes into extreme levels, right? So how do you ensure they're actually getting skilled, they're not just taking the funds from the government and not getting the skills?
I'll answer both your questions.
Yes.
I'll give a specific example for the first question that you had. We had during COVID time set up a factory in Vadodara, completely export oriented factory, focused on hardcore manufacturing. We recruited people from young team members, 18 years age, from ITIs of Gujarat. But the skills that they had were not good enough to allow them to weld components. We set up a facility with AR, VR technology. We used to put them through the training for 3-4 months, and after that they start production. The beauty about this scheme, as Mr. Vallabh rightly mentioned, is you can create a stream of people who you don't need to put on the job, but you can continuously train. So they acquire that skill, and when they are ready, you take them in. Today, your company, you have a large pool of people who are not contributing to the actual job, you are spending time in training. So this big need is addressed. The second point I wanted to make, for the industry to grow, if the MSME sector does not have the right skill sets and MSME sector does not grow, we'll be the assembly capital of the world, will not be the manufacturing capital.
Okay, so you're providing a pool for the small and mid companies, that we totally understand. But let me ask you this question, Mr. Puri. Now you've got these interns, they come to you, everybody wants to come and intern at Hindustan Unilever. How do you ensure, how they intern at ITC, how do you ensure that they are gainfully engaged, that they actually acquire skills? Because you will have to leave a certain amount of bandwidth to try and deal with these interns who the government is paying for.
No, so internship and training are well established processes in organizations, and there is capacity to train more people, and it can be done. And they will of course be properly mentored and gainfully employed, etc. All that will happen. But I just want to come back to this earlier point that you've been stressing on how do the jobs get created. Now let me just build on what I thought, just building on the anecdote that Mukundan said. See what happens if your project gets delayed. If a project is delayed, by the time the project gets into production, the lead time increases. So once the project gets into production, the economic opportunities start arising. If it's get delayed, it is later, right? How often have we heard from MSME sector that I now have orders, but I don't have the people to fulfill? We have heard it in our ecosystem. So there is this unmet need also that we must recognize, and I think that is where much of the benefits will come from.
But here's a real concern. One, the potential for misuse based on what happened in an advanced economy like the United States. So much reportage in America on how the incentives were misused. If it can get misused in the US, the chances of misuse in India are higher. And secondly, how do you ensure that during that internship, the youngster who comes to you gets the bandwidth from people at the lower levels of management to actually acquire the skills that Mr. Mukundan's company will later require potentially?
So I think there is one important thing that happens in that 1 year, and that is you train and you give him a certificate which is the government norms, the NCVT certificate. That itself increases mobility, his job opportunities, and that 1 year gets utilized. You've seen all surveys of all large and mid-sized companies and small companies saying that we need people and we are not getting the right people. Sure. So I think there is appetite to employ more, and there is appetite to even take people. You know, if you take two, one will go after 1 year, it doesn't matter. So this actually incentivizes you to rapidly involve more people in your workforce, for manufacturing companies especially. So that's a big way to go forward and have a trickle-down effect when they get trained in that 1 year and get that certificate. But that certificate, which they never get otherwise.
What issues are you to? Sorry, Shari, please.
No, thanks. No, I just wanted to make one point. See, we all, as you were also mentioning, we all have internship programs.
Sure.
We have an internship program which is in rural India. We have a program which is a Global Green Scholars internship program. I think what an internship does is it just engages the youth to familiarize themselves with what they're interested in, and in a way, you know, they're getting this sort of competency to go and, you know, get qualified with the certification with CB was mentioning, and you know, become available for sectors like ours, for example, in the renewable space, with the extreme shortage of resources, for us to have this pool of capital which is ready, and obviously private sector will have to invest more in getting them more ready to fit in and to rely on them. But I think it's an introduction in areas and sectors where we need people to come to
the
work.
good thing is it's a big idea. At least there's an idea. Now obviously it depends on the implementation, and that will determine the efficacy, but at least there's an idea that's been thrown out. You want to make a point before?
No, I was just wondering, when you're saying misuse, what misuse were you looking at?
No, so for example, that they were just getting the dole and not necessarily reporting into work and just benefiting from the dole. Right?
No, but these are top 500 companies.
Yeah,
right?
no, so I'm saying these are people, because now how much is the incentive on that company to actually make sure
but they're putting
that the person is
they're putting
acquiring
their
the
name
skill.
out, they're putting their on the digital portal and everything else. So yeah, there's 1%, 2% chance of everything, but I would say substantively 95% plus should be.
I think India has done better in many areas.
Sure.
I
And
think
technology
so.
leverage
We
will be
shouldn't
higher.
benchmark with the US.
Having worked in UK, I have seen this very seamlessly being done there. It was very regular for the company JCB in UK to have a group of people, and it used to be handled. Obviously, you know, there may be some leakages somewhere, but overall it was very positive. And the most beautiful part about is that in India, even today, the college curriculum does not create people so that they can hit the job on the first day. I think this program will bridge that particular gap.
So the broad consensus on the first part of the broadcast is that directionally it's the right move, it's also the right signaling. Ultimately, then it is about reviewing how this gets implemented. I want to come now to the second central question, which is to do with investment outlook. And I want to start with Chandrajit Banerjee, because we've had this conversation multiple times. Now there is no new research to suggest that, yes, private investment, particularly in some sectors, like cement, steel, for example, is kick-starting. It's not happening for industry as a whole. Capacity utilization as an average is still in the mid-70s, hasn't headed up to 80s, has been mid-70s for a very long time. What's your current outlook on that, and to what extent does the budget address this central challenge of investment?
Yeah, so I mean, we have had government capex-led growth for time, and there has been, but as you said, the private sector has started investing in some of the sectors. If you really look at our outlook, we see more than 70% of the sectors above 75% of capacity utilization. That's what roughly the service.
No, but
is.
it stayed mid-70s for a very long time.
It stayed mid-70s for a very long time.
Why is it not heading up to the early 80s?
So no, it is heading up to more than 80s in many of the sectors. Many sectors have headed beyond 80% capacity utilization. Number one. Number two, you know what we see also, a trend which is coming in is the entire thing of making it easier to do business, and I think that's very critical. You see in the budget also a lot of element of trust coming in terms of looking at the tax structures in the next 6 months. All of that actually enables for any entrepreneur, for any company to take that now plunge into greater investment. Today also, number three, you see a demand factor globally. We are doing well. Actually, we are doing well, even in especially services exports, so to say. So we see even opportunities coming up for scaling
But the economic survey also speaks of how services exports are likely to be impacted by artificial intelligence, and how the medium to long term trend is basically anti-service exports, and that whole sector is imperiled because of these global trends. Right?
Yes, the economic survey has been, I mean, it's also talked about very conservative growth rate for India, which is good, that type of cautious optimism. We are talking about an 8% growth. And we are talking about an 8% growth because we see private capex playing a very important role in the months to come.
So CII is projecting 8%.
Yes, please.
Then the government is projecting 6.5%.
Yes, please.
So you know what happened during the elections was that the BJP said "Ab ki baar 400 par," and it didn't turn out like that. So they've been conservative, as they have been for a couple of years now. When it comes to growth numbers, industry and even the IMF is projecting a more bullish growth number. So they are being.
But Rahul, if you look at this
financially conservative.
If you look at last 3 years,
yes.
If you look at BE and RE has always been higher than BE. I think if you look at the first two paras also of the finance minister, I think their basic, as I understand, the basic theme is that you are in a global uncertain era.
Sure.
You want India to be strong. There could be global headwinds because of geopolitical issues. So, you know, and also when you look at investments, you just don't look at GDP growth for this year. You look at what's the strength of the balance sheet. So a lot of focus has been be conservative, build a stronger balance sheet, provide clear direction, so that helps long-term investors to take better investment.
Now, how does this budget and everything that's happened in the build-up to it impact the investment outlook for India, in your view?
So I think, you know, the fact that the first theme is that a lot of people they'll become more populist and everything else. The focus remains the same. The focus is on macroeconomic stability. A lot of focus on trying to encourage manufacturing, MSMEs, jobs, which in a way will create demand of its own right, on energy transition, on focusing states and others to focus more on digitization. So if you look at all the themes around this, and even if you look at 7% growth or 6.5–7% growth, you compare with what's happening outside, and you look at a gliding path of fiscal deficit from 4.9% to 4.5% and hopefully below 4% in years to come. I think it does definitely give rise to, you know, anyone who's looking at creating new capacity or whatever, that gives rise to that. And on your earlier question which you asked, CB, yes, AI will displace jobs, but to implement AI, the kind of things that you require, right from starting to, you know, building the data layer, building the cloud architecture, doing your enterprise modernization, you know, and if you look at net surplus around the world, you look at scale, you look at cost, you look at availability, you look at quality. You know, this is, so a lot of companies are, and this is why the GCCs are going up, and the tech companies, hopefully, you know, the demand will start showing up. But that in itself is a great impetus. So yes, AI is definitely a challenge. We'll have to figure it out, but I don't think it'll impact as much as people think. There's also an opportunity if we can skill right and move right.
Let's spend a moment on investment outlook for companies like yours and from other people that you're speaking to, your assessment of whether India Inc. is now more bullish than it was in the past.
So let me just say this. I think I want to sort of add to what CB has already highlighted. Most sectors are already at 80–85% utilization, and most of them are already investing. If you look at steel actually is a big number, so their number comes out well in front. But if you sort of say that chemical sector, all the sectors, all the companies I know are all investing now. So really we see that the numbers would tend to double at least in the next 5 to 6 years. And if the revenue has to double, our capacity has to double. And the real issue you got to think about are the companies which are doing project execution, which means companies like Tata Projects, Larsen & Toubro, or the capital goods company, is there a waiting list for them? I can tell you all of them have waiting lists.
Okay. So in this part of the broadcast, I want to come to the other message which has been delivered over the past 48 hours, which is to do with investments from China. Now, Gaurav Vallabh, for a very long time post Galwan, the messaging from the External Affairs Minister, the Defense Minister, even the Prime Minister was that investment from China is not welcome. So they were coming and flooding our startups, which was good for those startups. We kind of clamped down on that. When the likes of a BYD wanted to come in and invest in India with mega engineering, we didn't allow that. Now the economic advisor is telling us that this is actually counterproductive because we are still trading with them, the trade balance is increasing, imbalance is increasing, and therefore let them come in as FDI. is the government, without saying anything in the budget, suggesting a massive change in how you view investments from China? Because the situation on the border still remains what it was, and what Jaishankar was asking for a return to status quo hasn't happened. So how do you explain that?
See, Rahul, there are two things. One is investment from China and another is China plus one policy. So a lot of manufacturing capacities, lot of manufacturers, global manufacturers are going towards the China plus one manufacturing policy. So for
that's
them,
not answering my question.
I'm answering, I'm coming to that. So saying that coming investment from China and China plus one, these are altogether different.
No, I'm talking about what Anant Nageshwaran said in the economic survey yesterday, where he says we now need to attract foreign direct investment from China. I ask you this because since May 2020, we've actually been signaling that we don't want Chinese investment in India, that we're pushing back against it.
See, our status as far as the Chinese investment is concerned, we are at the same level what we were 2 years back or 1 year back. We are not.
No,
we
I'm
are
just
not,
talking about the Chief Economic Advisor's report from yesterday.
That's what I'm telling you. That he might be highlighting China plus one policy. You had misunderstood that.
No, I haven't I read
economic survey.
I read what the economic survey said.
Rahul, economic survey I had gone through at least 2 times. There was not a single sentence where it is written like that. But anyhow, I don't want to debate on this with you on this. Second point, which we were discussing before your second question, that this internship scheme. See, Rahul, if you will go through page number 35 of the Nirmala Sitharaman's statement, all answers were there because you had raised a point about Jugaad, that that internship scheme can be gone away with Jugaad. See, in page number 35, it is written, it is for which age group, what is the educational qualification, what is the qualification of the parents, like government servants, son or daughter, or person having a income tax up to this level, they can't avail this particular facility. So primarily it is for those people who are not getting that particular opportunity for getting internship.
So Gaurav Vallabh is saying, at least on camera, that he hasn't read this, but it's written quite clearly, so there's no way he's not read it. Let me ask.
Rahul, I don't want to debate on this, but I am telling you, twice I had read the economic survey.
Sir, batao.
Twice. So you are
Okay, yes, Mr. Chandrasekhar. Hey, na? That
See, all I want to...
Let me not get anybody into trouble. Let me ask the question in the way that it needs to be asked.
I can confirm that Niti Aayog chairman also talked about the fact that we share borders with China and there is need for us to be able to work amicably. But then obviously our Atmanirbhar strategy is addressing it.
Our policy, what we were 1 year back, we are at the same level.
That's not what's written in the economic survey. They're saying we need to look at investments from China, and that's something which is
Rahul, let us not debate.
But let me now get into the larger question. I'm going to ask this to Mr. Mimani because this is the more practical approach that let Chinese investments come in. In any case, it's not as if trade is getting impacted. China is still trading with India in a big way, and the imbalance is increasing. At least let them come and invest here, then more jobs will get created, manufacturing will. Do you think it's time to accept that we need to rework what we've been doing over the past 4 years?
See, I think it's a complex issue because I think there are, it depends on the industry that you are in, what are the dependencies, what are the issues around secrecy and confidentiality and overall sort of border relationships. So in isolation, I think it's difficult to answer, but if things were in the, as relationships between India and China grow, certainly in some sectors, and in those sectors where China has done really well, which is around energy transition, and if there is if there is a technology transfer in areas around EV or energy transition and everything, if one can get technology at a lower cost and more efficiently, there's no downside to that. But it has to be in the overall context of longer term relationship and mutual confidence in that relationship.
So I just, while Gaurav Vallabh was saying, and he's been a professor, so I want to be doubly careful, I just Googled it. I encourage our viewers to do the same. And the headline's very clear. FDI from China can help India increase value addition and exports. The economic survey very clearly signals it. I realize it's politically inconvenient and that explains the problem. But the fact that it's mentioned, Professor Vallabh, is very clearly there. Which is fine. I don't think he didn't read it. He almost certainly read it. But he's not saying, which is fine. I don't want to get into this debate.
You should give me opportunity to answer at least in one sentence. Again, I am saying there was no written statement saying that we are going to change or we promote to change the policy regarding Chinese investment, what was there 1 year back. Full stop.
I am so certain about it, is I interviewed Anant Nageshwaran just last evening, and he spoke it, but I don't want this discussion to get derailed because that's really not the idea here. But that Anant Nageshwaran said this, you can just Google it, YouTube it. He's on our show last evening explaining why he's advocated this change in position. Mr. Banerjee, do you think this is the more logical? One is the politics in the defense, the other is the logic, and there is logic to what is being suggested because your trade imbalance is continuing to grow. At least get their investment into it, get their money here, it will create jobs here.
So, I mean, we have to look at it from some perspectives. As you are saying, it's not just talking about whether investments from China would be required by us and in certain sectors, but what comes foremost is national security. And I think that has to be kept in mind when any discussions on FDI is being taken. Number two, how do we balance trade? How do we look at different sources of balancing to diversify our sources? I think that's critical vis-a-vis China. When we talk about China. Number three, when we really look at how do we create capacity on certain areas where there are Chinese investments and where we think that can, how do we build our own capacity? I think the focus has to be as to how and through in what period of time we develop capacities. Fourth, where things are somewhere getting stuck is where there is an investment and where we need certain personnel to come in to see that those investments are so that India can develop capacities. So actually it boils down to that particular issue, but it all needs to be seen from the point of security. So it's not a debate as to whether what we want or who wants, it's a point of how we should look at from the prism of the national security.
Okay, Mr. Mukundan wanted to come in on this. Do you think we need to just review how we're looking at China as an economic adversary, whereas now the new thinking or the positioning seems to be that you got Donald Trump probably coming to power in the United States in November. He will increase status. That's the new geopolitical reality you have to live with, and therefore you have to calibrate your positioning on China as well.
So Chief Economic Advisor actually wrote it, he called it China Conundrum. He actually titled it China Conundrum, and really I think firstly from the industry itself, from the membership, a lot of questions have been asked because these companies did import a lot of capital goods from China and they needed the visas. I think that was the first issue which got flagged. But also specifically has been highlighted, there are some technologies which will be available in China which we could access. But I think all this has to be done in the framework of having what I would call equitable, secure relationship.
Sure.
And I think that piece is well understood, and I think everybody understands the risks when you go along with that. But overall, I think when you look at the framework and wanting to build a framework of relationship with China, I think the balanced approach is what is needed, and maybe the right approach, as you are saying, is that investment is one way. But if you look at the complexity where we are in, Rahul, it's much more complex. We have a FTA with ASEAN.
Correct.
We have FTA with Korea and Japan. And China has already RCEP and FTA with them. And there's a spaghetti which is involved, and I think Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Finance need to think through this as to how to sort of engage on this topic in a way that it makes sense. For example, the biggest exporter of solar glass into India for the renewable energy is a Malaysian company. But it's a Chinese-owned Malaysian company. I mean,
and that's happening in Mexico, it's happening in Vietnam, it's happening elsewhere.
So we need to think through this piece.
So in the last part of this broadcast, I want to focus on consumption. There's a lot of talk about whether the government would make any financial moves to increase the disposable income of people, particularly in rural areas. There was talk about Kisan Nidhi possibly being increased from 6,000 to 8,000 rupees. That hasn't happened. What's your outlook on consumption, in particular in rural India? There's a lot of talk of distress. Has the budget done enough to be able to alleviate that? Are you disappointed that there is no, or do you think this is the more logical and financially prudent thing to do?
So you see, if you the way the industry has been looking at this whole issue, also has been is that the progress we have made through the investment-led growth, that's the framework that should be followed. Investment, employment, consumption, that virtuous cycle is what should be built upon. And we were saying also some bit of relief. And we were also talking about, as far as rural is concerned, can there be greater indexation to infra spends in rural, because that will also create non-farm jobs. So we are seeing some of this very clearly there. You see rural development, that figure that sits there now is 2.7 lakh crores, which is 40% more than what was there earlier. So that's a positive. There is some relief provided on the income tax perspective. And from a medium to long-term perspective, what is required for rural is a thriving also agriculture system. Because ultimately, half the workforce is in agriculture. So the thrust you saw, and that was the number one point out of the 9 points, thrust you saw on agriculture, productivity, and resilience, both which are very important today. I think that was fairly comprehensive. Now it's a question of industry working with the state governments and working with the other stakeholders and government to see how we can jointly execute those ideas. If we execute all of that to rural, I think medium term we'll have a much more resilient and thriving rural than we have today. So there are some steps that will provide relief in the short term, which is really through public capex, and medium to long term, it's about the investments in the enhancing the productive capacity and resilience of agriculture.
Mr. Nirmala, looking at all the work that you do, what do you think the budget does or should have done to try and address the consumption issue?
No, I think from a government standpoint, one is, I think Sanjeev has talked about the rural thing. The other is around GST, where I think she made an announcement that they will be looking at through whenever the GST.
But that's the GST Council to do.
There's a GST Council. That's the second way you can. And third is through personal tax reduction, where I think 17,500 rupees if you are a part of the new tax regime, which she said my sense is 2/3 of the people who are filing taxes are part of that regime, so they get that relief. Outside of that, I think the only thing you can do is to get more employment going. You can get more economic activity going for increasing consumption. Outside of that, or you do some direct transfer of income. I think this government doesn't believe that much in that, rightly so. They believe much more in the fiscal prudence and getting all this up through the productive mechanisms. So I would say that I think tax relief is definitely there. If there's one thing I think one could have seen more, would probably be not so much directly consumption, but more on the PLI schemes in some areas of textiles and others, where I think it could have added to, or in the FAME scheme if they've got more clarity on the amount of value.
No, because one of the messaging, Gaurav Vallabh, from the government in past budgets, and even whatever the finance minister and the prime minister says, that we want continuity and predictability in our tax regime, right? Now, for example, angel tax, after many years of insisting that is the right thing to do, has been done away with it, and thank God for that. But long-term capital gains tax has been increased by 2.5%. You haven't signaled whether it caps at 12.5% or whether this could go up to 15, 17, 20. We don't know that. And we've seen how customs duty on gold, silver has been reduced. Does that then introduce unpredictability and uncertainty about what might happen from here? Because so far the direction and the signaling was one of continuity and predictability.
No, continuity is there, Rahul. Where there is no continuity, there is a perfect continuity. Like I can give you example, like GST. So there is a continuity in the rate structure, in the items which are there. June 2024, we had collected 1.74 lakh crore rupees of the GST.
No, but let's take long-term capital gains tax on financial
coming to the tax structure, like our current slabs. So there were 2 slabs. So we want to continue with the new slab structure, where the continuity is there, that deductions and all those things should be left to the SSC itself. The people should be open.
But you're
for
not
that.
answering my question.
And
Is the
coming to
government
capital gain,
signaling that we feel that the stock markets are getting overheated and it's time to start looking at other financial instruments, whether it's debt or other assets like real estate, housing, that this is now getting, we think, too hot. We don't want for the markets to crash and fall, and therefore we want to increase tax. So what you haven't signaled is whether it caps at 12.5% or it could be increased further, creating uncertainty, which you said you wanted to avoid.
See, Rahul, budgets are always for 1 year, na? So there you can't say that when I am making one announcement and this will be there for the next 20 years. Nobody can predict those things. It all depends on the market scenario, what are the business
But this is
scenario.
like tinkering. Either you take it up to 15 or 20, it's 20% in the United States, for example, and then you say, okay, we end here.
Tinkering, because that can be because we gave a good reduction in the personal income tax. So to compensate that amount, a small tinkering can be done with this capital gain tax.
Small tinkering, which leaves a bitter taste in anybody's mouth, especially if he's a market participant. What impact, Mr. Nirmala, do you... One is, of course, the immediate turbulence. The markets are very happy when the long-term capital gain tax was introduced in the first place. Now it's been increased. To what extent does this muddy the financial waters in terms of people investing in the markets?
No, it doesn't muddy. I think there will be a reaction because obviously valuations and everything else will, we have seen that today, there will be a reaction which may extend for some time. But I won't say this government has tinkered. If you look at the
generally they don't want to.
Yeah, and this whole thing around trying to modify tax rates, capital gains tax rates, provide simplification there, has been in the air for now 18-24 months. CI itself is saying it's so complex, the whole schedule, that you want to simplify that. So what they've done is to bring the real estate from 20% down to 12.5%. Obviously, they've taken the indexation away, which has a significant impact, and 10%, and raised the listed securities from 10 to 12.5%. REIT InvITs, which were there, they've brought it to 12.5%. So I think overall they've tried to figure,
Are they trying to nudge a little bit of money from the public markets into other sectors on the assumption that, on the premise that the stock markets, we feel, might be getting overheated?
No, I think that is, they're looking at the FNO for that, because they think that that is more.
Do you support that, the new security transactions tax, the increase in tax on futures and options in derivative trading? Because we saw the SEBI chief say it, we saw the RBI say it, we saw the finance ministry say it, the economic advisor said it yesterday. It almost seemed as if a mahal was built that futures and options are going to be penalized.
Because the volume has really gone up, right?
Why is that a bad thing? If people are
because one is, it's engaging, as they have said, that a lot of young people are fully engaged in this and not doing anything else, and it adds, if there is volatility, it has a massive risk to the system. So what they are trying to do is to build, in some ways, build the arbitrage there, that the returns are, unless people are really seriously into it, not everyone just gets into that to get that 1%.
They want to take away the gambling instinct.
Yes. FNO, if you will check 20 young people's mobile phone, you will find 10 or 12 are having some demat or some trading account.
Why is that a bad thing?
I am telling you. These are not investing. This is speculation.
Trading. So that is what futures and options are.
See, there is a difference between investment, and we should promote investment in the markets.
No,
and these guys who do are uninformed.
They'll burn their fingers on a few transactions and they'll learn to be better. That's the logic of free enterprise.
Rahul, market information is not in totality with them. This is purely speculation.
So they'll burn their fingers, they'll lose money 9 out of 10, and then they'll learn that they shouldn't do this.
As a government, we should be concerned with that. Na? As a government, I should be concerned. My citizens are spoiling money like this. Okay. I should be concerned.
Okay, so that's a very deep philosophical argument. The government obviously wanting to play
Perhaps
financial.
Here we can learn from some of the other countries like in the US, etc., where and so perhaps not a bad thing. May not call it tinkering, but I guess mindful budgeting, perhaps, if that's a term we can take from this.
What's very significant in the budget is that the government has put employment, job creation front and center, and really thrown some financial muscle at trying to deal with the challenge. What will be very interesting to see as the months wear on is the actual outcome as a result of these incentives being provided, but the fact that there is an admission, because everyone who's watching, what they talk about most is jobs, jobs, jobs. So at least the government's made that the #1 priority and put everyone on notice in terms of what can be done to try and move the job creation needle. I want to thank all our guests for joining us. Mr. Puri, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mani. Thank you, Chandraji Banerjee, and all our guests over here for making the effort to join us. Make no mistake, I'm not suggesting at all that I was opposed to some of these ideas, but it's important to think through the outcome. Otherwise, it could just be a lot of talk which doesn't translate into end outcomes. That was the whole idea here. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I want to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The big focus of the union budget for FY 24-25 has been on jobonomics. An admission by the government that jobs need to be taken as the central economic and political priority, and they've thrown some financial ammunition at trying to address